Professor Sharif Khalid is an assistant professor of accounting and financial management at the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom. He joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Prof. Let's try to tear apart, slice and dice some aspects of the President's address. Is Mr. President's address what you expected? What are your key takeaways, and were you convinced that on the back of what he said, our economy will soon be on sound footing?
Well, I think that this had a very big expectation of the nation. And for me, from where I sit, from a very technical perspective, I think it fell short of actually meeting the expectations. I'll give you an example. I'll kind of buttress that. You'd realize that the market, as the president rightly indicates, listens to whatever is happening. And this is the president. You had the opposition leader who spoke a few days ago. Then you have the president speaking now. So what the market respects is that what coherent policies are in place to get the economy going or to get things fixed. And as far as I'm concerned with what the president has put together, it does not give any indication of a short-term relief, right? And for me also, I thought that given that we are on the table with the IMF understands or likes a certain language when they want to see opposition elements and government working in sync because their borrowing is long-term and tied to sovereign nations. So I expected the president to at least give credence to what the opposition leader or former opposition leader said and call for a bipartisan committee, right, or amalgamation to see how they could address these issues or these economic challenges we faced. So I think that was an opportunity for the president to actually bring a tool to enhance their engagement with the IMF. And I think he really did miss that opportunity, which is a shame.
And why do you think Mr. President's address lacks the roadmap to fixing the economy?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, right, there are a lot of issues happening. And the president went all on with free SHS, with COVID issues and the likes of that. But what we are forgetting is that we're still not giving cognizance to the fact that under COVID, we took a $1 million loan from the World Bank, which is one of the Bretton Woods institution, tied over a 30-year period. Right. So that is still a huge debt staring at us in the face. How are we addressing this? The president has not given a roadmap to it. So in essence, there is a lack of coherent roadmap because I keep emphasizing because you talk about salary cuts, what the president mentioned. Yeah. So what is salary cuts without actually cutting down the size of government? Right. It's as though you've not really met it or you're not really committed to doing that. So it means that there's still more to be done. And I think that this was a very strong opportunity for the president to communicate in strong terms that I'm getting the economy back on its feet, right? And this is what I'm doing. These are the local baskets of ingredients. So if you juxtapose this to what the former opposition leader said, talking about, unwanted projects, cutting down the size of government, I thought that the president would have reinforced on this and said, look, rightly so.
I was going to come to that, Prof. I was going to ask you, how do you compare that with measures outlined by former President Mahama?
Yeah, so what I'm saying here is that the single source of funding we're looking to stabilize our economy is the IMF. And the very language the IMF expects or love to see is the opposition in sync with the government. So if an opposition leader has actually spoke before you, that gives you an opportunity to actually draw upon the positives of what the opposition leader has produced in his address, right, to tie that into what you think is right and what the ingredients you're putting together to actually salvage the economy. I think when you do this, it goes a long way to give confidence of your engaging team with the IMF that something right is going to be done. And the IMF will have the confidence that given that the opposition and the government are speaking the same language, then our long-term support to which we are giving have the backing of both. So whichever takes over government or whichever comes and goes, will still have a stability, whatever engagement. And I think that then again, the government lost this opportunity.
And what did you want to hear the president say last night, Prof?
Well, I mean, yes, what I wanted him to say last night is say, okay, well, we recognize that this is the state of the economy, right? So i.e., we are cutting X number of projects away, like as they did in some of the issues which they went after, which were not really very strong in terms of abolition, some taxes that were low-hanging fruits. So what are the issues that you want to government profligate expenditure? This is what we're doing, right? i.e., probably we're setting up a pool of cars that these days no government minister or agency should have 2 or 3, 4WDs to yourselves and the likes of that. These are minute issues that when they aggregate, they form a basket of solutions that would go a long way to enhancing the market. But, at some point, I find the president sounding very threatening, which I think the market doesn't like, because we are still a very quasi-regulated market. Right. And when you start to issue threats to these gray markets, then you find that people would engage in illegality the more, because, we don't have the regulatory power to capture all of these issues that are happening. And I think that they haven't really been strong, sober reflections around putting a coherent roadmap. And I want to hear more in terms of what we are doing about our debt issues. I want the president to say, okay, well, our current bank reserves, as I said, been depleting. What have been the briefing of this? Where is the state of the economy as far as reserves are concerned? Because these are things that back the economy. These are things that back inflation. These are things that back currency. And I think that all of these things were lacking in the speech. I know that you're probably anticipating that I'm going to call for the sacking of the finance minister. No, I think that he could stay. That time is past gone, right? He can stay and let's see what he can do. But I think that there's still more expectations as to the tangibility of what. And by and large, I expected a bipartisan call from the president, right, which I am saying, or I would emphasize that is the tone and language that Bretton Woods institutions like. They want to see continuity, right? And we missed that opportunity as a country.